Hi, this is Ali from Origen. In today's video, I'll be giving you a quick overview of the GUI interface that goes along with our hosted PBX solution. Now, one of the first things you're going to see, obviously, is the login screen. So let's go ahead and log in here. As soon as you log in, our system dashboard pops up. So the goal of the system dashboard is to give you some quick metrics about your PBX instance. You'll see information about calls. You'll see some information about services. You'll also see some detailed information about the type of users that are logged in. For example, the type of mobile OS, if they're using soft phones. And you'll also see some information about resource usage. Now, one of the things I'd like to point out is that not a lot of hosted PBX solution providers will give you this much information. And the reason for that is because we have an enterprise class focus. A lot of the other hosted PBX providers are focusing on SMB, and a lot of these services and resource informations are hidden in the back end because it's a shared environment. In our case, we focus on enterprise, and it's very important for our IT administrators that work with us to basically have this information for their day-to-day management and troubleshooting purposes. And it creates a lot of transparency in terms of the health of the actual instance itself. Now, this theme also continues on the rest of our system and some of the feature sets that we offer. Now, continuing on, I'm going to talk about the menu system. So this menu system is tree-based for organizational purposes. When compacted, it only focuses on some of the high-level features of the PBX. So one of the things you can do is obviously click on one of the options. So for example, if I click on extensions, it will expand that option and give you some additional features. So you'll see that one of the things that appeared in the tree is the systems extensions. So the systems extensions are just your general system extensions that you can basically search. If there's a large amount, you have a little search bar here. Custom extensions is for some users that have very specific needs where the regular extensions would not suffice. This rarely happens because a lot of our extension features are very complete, and this would only be in certain cases where there's a very specific feature needed. But the great thing is that the feature is available if there is some very custom requirement needed. Ring groups is basically a virtual extension that links up to multiple extensions. So basically what that does is that, let's say you have a sales department and you need to have multiple people ring up on a particular menu options. For example, if you say something like press 1 for sales in your menu and you want to have it ring multiple sales reps at the same time, you can do that. Now, as far as paging groups are concerned, this is just an evolution to the old school sort of paging environments that were a little bit more limited and static. In this case, you can create groups based on location. You can create groups based on departments. So I'm not going to go too much into it, but it's basically a very advanced version of the traditional paging that you would be used to on a normal PBX. Departments is just a section that you can create for different sort of user groups. It allows you to template and create certain rules. Once again, I'm not going to go into it because this is a very high level video that I'd like to create. So this is just a general environment that you can create for templating purposes and whatnot. Now, hot desking is a very particular feature that basically allows shared environments to have neutral phones that don't belong to anybody. So for example, if you have a work environment where you just walk in and sit on any random desk, you're able to basically sit at that desk, type in your extension number and your PIN directly on the phone, and that phone becomes your extension for the day. This is great for, once again, shared environments where you don't really know where the person is going to be sitting on a regular basis. And it's a very particular feature that we offer that doesn't really exist in a lot of PBXs actually, let alone hosted PBX solutions. Now, just to get back to extensions here, I'll give you a little bit of a sort of a detailed edit view of what it looks like. So one of the things about our system is that anything that you edit generally will have a basic view, and then it will also have a advanced view. So for example, in a basic view, if you just want to go ahead and create the extension, you can choose the extension number for the person, the name, the email, the department, and also some of the stuff that's auto-generated is the secret and the password for that particular user, and obviously the PIN for the voicemail and other features. So this is just a basic view. If you just want to get it done, create it, and that's it. Now, this is where some of the enterprise stuff kicks in, because the system's goal is to cater to, both segments. If there's an SMB that's looking for, a non-detailed environment, you can just have the basic view and, get some of your basic stuff configured and have yourself be up and running. But in the advanced view, you can have a lot of the detailed stuff that you can control. So there's a very technical sort of feature set in terms of control. Some of it is technical on the networking side. Some of it is technical on the functionality aspect of things. I'm not going to go over it today, but this is just to give you an idea that it can get very, very granular. And once again, this follows a theme of the enterprise-grade hosted PBX solution that is not the same mentality as a lot of the other hosted PBX providers. Our goal is to host for enterprise and to allow them to have full control over their PBX technically. Now, one of the other things I'm going to specifically cover for extensions is that on the feature set side, you have something called enhanced services. Now, enhanced services is a whole set of features that are specific to extensions only. So I'm going to quickly go over these. So caller ID, first of all, is something that allows a particular user or their administrator to control their caller ID. So let's say if you have a global caller ID for the company, but for a particular user, you'd like to basically have a specific caller ID, you can go ahead and change that. So that particular user can change their caller ID name and also their caller ID number. You have other functions like, do not disturb, which is a very advanced do not disturb in the sense that you can control the timer on it. You can control basically the who it applies to and whatnot. Same thing for call filters and blocking. So I'm not going to necessarily go over everything. I'll just give you a high-level overview. So for example, in call filter and blocking, if I was to save this and go ahead and edit it, you can actually basically say, okay, if somebody's anonymous, they call me, do nothing, call forward it to somebody else, use a privacy manager, which basically forces them to say their name before the call gets connected, send it to a voicemail, say I'm not in service, ring forever. You could also apply these same features to a very specific phone number, for example, a particular customer that you want to forward directly to your cell phone, your wife, for example, that calls the office. So you have a very detailed control over some of these features. Follow Me is kind of a functionality that allows you to have sort of a step-by-step follow me process. So let's say if I'm at my desk and I know that if I don't answer within 3 rings because I'm probably stepped out, it will automatically basically go ahead and follow you on your cell phone. So I can basically configure the amount of rings that it takes before it follows me to a different source. Now, you have a lot of other control in terms of recordings, in terms of call monitoring, and a couple of other features that are available directly on the extensions. The goal of this video is a high-level overview, so I'm going to keep it short and not necessarily go over this. You can always look at our other videos that are a little bit more extensive on some of these features. Another thing that I'm going to cover is DIDs. So basically what DIDs is, this is where you control all of the phone numbers associated with your system. So one of the things you can do is, for example, if I was to edit this, I can choose, where this particular phone number ends up. So in this case, it's going to an IVR, which is a menu system, but you can send it directly to an extension. You can send it to a hold queue. a voicemail, and you have a couple of other options in the system, such as fax to email and whatnot. And once again, following the general theme of our system, you have the basic configuration just to get it done and get it to start working. But you also have all the advanced configuration where you can really control a whole lot of detail of how this environment functions. One of the things I could tell you is like you have CLI validation and routing. So for example, if you have a toll-free number that covers multiple territories, you can actually decide based on territory where it goes and whatnot, and then you have a lot of other sort of routing information that you can control on this particular phone number. Once again, simple basic view if you just want to get it done, and you have your advanced view if you really want to have a full control of what you're doing. The next thing I'm going to quickly cover is conferences. Well, one of the things that this system does is that it has a fully integrated conference bridging system as a part of the system. So this is normally a feature that you would pay separately for. The type of thing where you have multiple users kind of dial in to have a conference. This is not to be confused with, your desktop conference, which usually just calling in your buddy and conferencing them in. This is more of a full enterprise-grade conferencing solution that's integrated into the system itself. So I'll give an example. Because this is an integrated solution, you have full control over what you can do. So typically when you get a conferencing solution with an external system, you don't get to choose the little nitty-gritty details such as, announcing who joins or who leaves automatically, recording the conference, having marked users and announcing them, having an environment where you can choose your hold music. These are all things that are preset for you and are external to your current PBX. So the beauty about the way we do it is that not only do you have an integrated conferencing solution in your PBX that's sort of like functioning as one whole system without having to go external, you also get all of these granular sort of features that you can control and customize to your liking. So these are the kind of things you can do with our system, and once again, following the theme of advanced versus simple, depending of what you're trying to do. And a lot of users can either go into advanced options for certain part of their system, and certain things they can just kind of leave default. So you also have an independent call records that you can have for your conferencing. So this means that the call records for conferencing and the call records for your regular system are kind of kept apart, so you can manage them or give access to certain parts of your team individually based on how you want to sort of manage your system. So the next thing I'm going to cover is your IVR systems. So you can have, so what IVR stands for is interactive voice response, which is basically a menu system. And once again, once you have a menu system, you can have various options that can match your pre-recorded greetings that you can select right over here. So let's say if you said one is for John, you can send it to, you can kind of match your recording and send it to John directly. If you would have like another option that would send you to a submenu, for example, a different language, you could select that IVR and send it there directly. So it pretty much gives you a GUI interface to manage your IVR and upload your recordings directly. So you can kind of independently create menus and departments that are associated to those menus and have that up and running yourself. Now, one of the things you can also see is that on the drop-down you have multiple options. So what happens is when you select a particular option, what ends up happening is that you have some custom features that you can modify for that particular option, such as if you want to change the caller ID, change the language. In this particular case for the directory, you can change the fact that if the read extension number is, basically if the extension number is played out or not. You can choose if they can search by first or last name and both. So this theme kind of continues on. Depending on the option that you choose, you have some additional options. It's a sort of a subset of what happens once they enter that environment. So it has a lot of control on the basic side. Now, once again, following the theme of our system, you can click on the advanced options and have very detailed control, such as operation times, limiting who the local extensions that can be dialed. There's a lot of things that you can control here. Once again, I'm not going to go over it because it's just to give you a high-level overview of what the system can do. So the next thing I'm going to cover here is queues. So queues are kind of like ring groups, but very advanced. They're more for environments where if you have a lot of users calling in or a large group of agents taking in calls and you want a lot more control over what's going on, you can create a queue. You can actually add some agents in there that are basically part of the queue. And those are people that are going to be associated to the queue and the rules that apply to them for inbound calls. So this happens a lot in support environments where you have a support team that needs to take on a large amount of calls, and because of the number of calls, the person needs to be on hold and wait a certain amount of time. And if you click on advanced options in this particular case, you have a lot of control over how that queue is managed. Some of the things that you can actually control is, for example, you can decide if you want to record. You can also have some announcements played back if you want to announce the average hold time for the customer based on statistics for the day, or if you want to announce their position in the line. And you can have certain rules on what happens if the person wants to leave the queue. There's also a feature called queue callback, where if the particular user doesn't want to actually hold, you can actually select, get them to select an option that lets them kind of jump out of the queue but still be in the same sort of, let's say, position and get called back automatically. Once again, these are the kind of functions that you would normally see in an enterprise-grade system that's local, and you don't really see these kind of options available in the hosted PBX side. And our goal is to bring that to the hosted PBX side as far as some of the enterprise-grade functions are concerned. The queue also has its own independent call records, so you can kind of monitor or give access to some of your sort of colleagues that are specifically managing particular queues. So one of the things I think that I forgot to mention is that the system actually has a multi-tiered sort of access environment where you can actually choose certain users to have access to certain parts of this menu tree and limit them on certain users and whatnot. And this is great for larger enterprise, once again, where you don't just want to have all-in-one access for everybody. You want to be able to give like kind of a granular control to different people based on what they're doing and their department. So for example, a sales manager would only have access to the sales queue and the call records for the sales queue, and also have access to listen in to recorded calls of his sales team, and you wouldn't want him to have access to anybody else. Well, you can do that with this system. Normal hosted PBX systems don't go that granular. It's kind of an all or nothing type of environment. Now, agents, I'm not going to cover too much. This is a very call center specific feature where, the only thing I can tell you about that, this is for environments where the agent has a lead set where he's automatically dialing. Because it's a very call center specific function, I'm not going to cover it in the video, but I'll just kind of give you a quick overview or a highlight of what it does. So that's pretty much for call centers. There is a different version of the system that is very focused on call center. It has a lot of features that are not here that are focused for call centers. This is for more of a basic call center, just want to get a few agents going. Voicemail is a section that gives you a general voicemail for everybody. When you create an extension, a voicemail automatically gets created here, but you can also create virtual voicemails, and there's a lot of rules that you can create on how those voicemails operate. Basically just like something like a virtual voicemail for a department or a general voicemail that you can create for various purposes. You can also have voicemail groups, which is very interesting because it allows you to actually have a voicemail blast environment. So for example, if you have a virtual voicemail for the sales department, if somebody leaves a voicemail in that particular group, it could actually send a voicemail out to pretty much everybody in the group. This is something that, once again, doesn't usually exist on hosted PBX. It's more of an enterprise-grade feature. Monitor is great for administrators or IT admins that are kind of trying to troubleshoot on what's going on, especially if they have a large amount of extensions and a particular user is complaining. You can actually see the users that are online. In this case, nobody's online. But if someone was online, this would be completely highlighted in green, and you would see the online status. You'd also see the IP address and the type of phone that the person is using. You could also see the call status of the person. So this is a great way for troubleshooting. You also see the MAC address of the actual user, so that you can actually, use that if you want to, involve the networking side of your environment to figure out what's going on. You can also monitor queues. You have a quick queue panel that gives you a general idea of who's waiting and whatnot. Keep in mind that we also have a separate application for more advanced stats and views. This is just the GUI interface itself, but if you wanted to have like a sort of a headboard or something, or a screen that you wanted to hang out on top of your support department's area, you could actually have this separate application display all that information. I'm not going to really go too much into it, but once again shows the capability of the system. Live calls just gives you an idea of the live calls. You can kind of control what's going on with them. Gives you sort of a feedback of who's calling who and whatnot. This is better for admins trying to troubleshoot the system. These are some of the settings that are a little bit more advanced. I'm not going to go into this right now. And then you have your general reports. Your general reports are non-queue calls and non-conference calls, in and out calls from employees to external to internal and whatnot. This is where you would actually manage your recordings as well. Let me see here if I can get you a couple calls. Let's go ahead a few days back, see if there's anything there. Yeah, so this is kind of what the view would look like. You'll see your calls between employees, external or internal. And usually when you have a recorded call, you'll have this little play button. And all you really need to do is select it and go ahead and click on listen, and you could go ahead and listen to your call. Now, one of the things that's important to know is that the rules of whose calls are recorded are set directly on the extension or general rules on the PBX itself. So only the calls of who you, the employees, or the rules that apply to certain calls will take place. This will not record all calls. And once again, your internal company policy or your local legal side can decide how that's done. We as a PBX provider will provide you this information, this feature, and you can kind of control it the way you like. Another thing that's interesting about this is that we also have a remote storage feature, which actually allows you to basically store calls remotely. So I'm going to actually go in here and show you how that works. So you can enable this feature and select either Amazon AWS, you can use Dropbox or FTP, and what it will do is, based on certain rules, will just upload all the recordings off-site. This is great for environments where you need to keep the recordings for a very, very long time, sometimes years. We do have companies that are in the insurance space that need to keep the recordings for a very long period of time. This allows you to offload those recordings off-site into some type of storage environment and just keep them there for a very long time. It also allows you to select what type of resource that you're going to send off. You can send off all your faxes, which is usually PDF files, voicemail, and recordings off-site, and they're stored in a very structured way so that you can organize them and filter them out remotely on a sort of an off-site solution. This is great for long-term storage. This pretty much covers a lot of the PBX. I mean, you also have like a fax section, for example, here where all your faxes are stored online. You have a couple of different configurations that are a little advanced that you can, have for the fact side. You have some statistics that you can generate reports for. In this particular case, there's not very much information, so you can generate graphs based on that data. Once again, there's no data, so there's not anything appearing. So it's a pretty complete system, covers all your bases for an enterprise-grade phone system. Once again, I didn't really go into the highly technical details of every little function. This we will do in another video. This was an overview of the system. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it gives you a good insight on what our system can do and how it operates. Look forward to making some more videos for you and covering some more detail on the next ones. Thank you.